represents the element in the induction that basically currently like the order given by like the shadow amount of to like the base on the army. And the point will be only to that destroy specifically like just like the office lab alone, the air than available payload, especially in the frame because of like them destroying it being like the kind of from like the house of lab that had destroyed like the using like the flamethrower had destroyed like that whole around upside down. So like I'm going this would be like a retaliation attack and like a warning by the shadow monster to that the leader of that whatever we have of this name of the so that either a warning or like an intent to like somebody be destroyed and put an end to that the birth of like the and available about it against like the shadow monster and like the predicament like the things that you have to remember. So right now I'm focusing like the black current attack by like the monster and anything with like the reflection of like the energy laboratory as well as like the majority of the science the annihilation of the criminals majority of like the scientists like the energy laboratory by this army of the like to this scenario that so like I'm putting skill for like which is the amount of temperature that I'm leaning more towards the study for like own self so they're surviving along with like the province of Pennsylvania without that Hopper and George and Twin. It's the thing and asking like how they will be survived from like the earth attack with the mountain of the institute of the so that they could be through that and only into the escaping through like the gate the thing like the Nadia about it to like the parallel that would be that by entering into like the parallel would be how so would be like escaping from like that type of like the twist motives like the scenario that I'm using and also only right now protecting for like a serious possibility of like the delay of the reasons like in that own like team of like since there was that one civic scientist who was like least concerned about like the most probably insensitive about like the number the flipper things that have just like monster army basic monster army would be like integrating and rating it to like the level and would be like wiping out like the scientists one by one like I'm budgeting at that point that's the scientist can budget like him has like just like attempt to like stop that attack or of like this monster like on with like him straight away targeting Gwen for when it's like for the for better than when the can scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing like him for straight away like that to be kind of around like straight away running to like the room that will to be better than him and I'm like him at that point totally trying to that attack and take the life of that with that scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm being really like him like there would be him picking up a flamethrower gun and will really him about to use it onto that poor thing. It's like the scenario that I'm looking, but at that very last second, I'm looking at most likely the highly likely scenario that I'm taking with from like Hopper most likely attacking him from behind. Hopper or Joyce, like I'm looking at that point, like them like an extremely enraged of Joyce, like attacking him from behind and like to leave them taking the totally run escaping to that parallel through like the game with an external with a then the scenario that I'm putting. While that scientist that incentive scientist who would be like trying to like who would have tried to like take Wings life and save that and thing. So by the time he would be like getting up and basically it would be him as well trying to like basically escape into like the throw the gates into the network, but like even before he would be able to do that, like after the like the basic most of things in after him and like the faceless monster army like taking his life, like in the scenario that and along with like him, like I'm looking at the majority of his kind of him like that never ever as well getting wiped out by that track and like that everything in like the Nabila would be like totally destroyed by the favorite ones of that. It will be they will be acting according to that specific commands to the to them by the shadow monster to get like that is the feeling then there will be that absolute respect within like the orders like this is monster towards like the shadow monster. They could only see the shadow monster. It wouldn't just be due to like the shadow monster being loved inside the effect. There would be that like hierarchy element between like the monster where like these faceless monsters like it's humanoid sized and this stuff like faceless monsters will be like loyally listening to like the order given to them by the shadow monsters that they will be and that will be like the first and the still remember that will be the precise reason for like events like the faceless monsters that had basically the great number of them that had tried to like take the life of like Dustin and Steve and all of them like basically them even giving up the foot to that basically to that what according to like the command of the face would be. according to like the command that maybe share among the review, because we due to that it's like stream respect and duty bound nature that would represent the thing these like favorite points. It's definitely not so yeah, it's my decision. Still taking my career impression as well, like in the ways of career, like I'm going to like the person like the career will be like perfectly okay, that but like she is only pretending and okay, putting on a fake act as if like she's like okay, unwell. It might be like that to reflect the current situation. Definitely my method in it. So like the repeated words of like career of like break sunflower, rainbow, and all this would be like career story as well attempt to like only trick Jane and Jane 11 into that searching for that in that the rainbow or that which would definitely be I'm still thinking about the film so that would definitely be candy. So like I'm looking at definitely I'm thinking about so that like the race might have definitely seen like the future. I think would definitely see having like the power of like future sight. And on the current race might have always seen head to like the future of the race might have seen that they will in order for like eventually for like 11 of the to like finally be fully free and to be able to that turn back into like living a normal life with like career and like mother and daughter like not from that to be possible like the race might have also seen like the future and might have only realized that it won't be possible anytime soon. Like, the race might have also seen that 11 right now like the person like showing up to like the race and all that through like the future time, but still I'm the race might have probably seen even ahead to like the future and might have probably figured that basically if like the race totally like reveals that like she's okay to like 11 right now, then 11 definitely won't get all willing to like leave the race room. And if that happens, like, which we eventually definitely the race might have felt that basically eventually the remaining members of like surviving members of like Pranav team would definitely eventually would be ending up coming for like 11 and capturing and taking away and again from career to so like to like for like 11 to like finally be fully free and for 11 to like properly get like to turn back to like career and to get to like live a normal life with like career like so they should take a lot great number of years helping to like the before that happens. So we want to get a race might have already figure to like the race field of like the minimal race. But like right now like the priority of like the race would be to like basically by people with only a practical plan of the race by the race like because like I'm the one right now the race will is already putting on a fake hand by repeating like the words like rainbow sunflower and all that and by like consciously the race will be consciously showing like in event that like that other girl in like the rainbow so that like basically in the rainbow room so that like element would be getting curious about like that other girl in like the rainbow room so that like element that curiosity would eventually lead element to that basically look for that other girl and eventually for to get element to that basically eventually towards that other girl in the rainbow room which is definitely Gallin and because like the percentages of the region that carry as well have like different power and like under the nature race might have only seen to have like the future and might have also figured that basically uh, the point where you know be finding here like from back to an like and live with like properly live with like the race only after like once like the spreading of like the parallel world into the real world and like the perspective of like the uh, uh, of like the face motive and everything would be possible. Like it would be only once that whole situation would be that solved through and like definitely it's a race that also seem to like the current team that like it has like an important role to play in that being possible in like in saving humanity from like spreading of the parallel world and like this is the all that. Definitely that in order to achieve that like goal like I'm looking at it wouldn't just be 11 alone, but like carry as well, that carry as well as her superpowers as well will be playing a major role in that being possible. It's definitely another thing. And it wouldn't just be like 11 and carry alone, like the other failed experiments of like so like I'm from all the way from one to like 1 to like 10, excluding 11, like I'm looking all the way from like the number from like 1 to 10, like I'm looking like and maybe like the race might be one of like those numbers, might have been one of those numbers. So like all those variables. So like the remaining numbers from like the individuals like who will be still alive to like some of them from like the numbers 1 to 10, like basically to get 11 to like eventually sub for each and every single one of them and for like it was to like form a team of those like individuals who have special powers, superpowers that of like 11 and for them to like form a team and form an army of like individuals with like superpowers and to fight together against like the faceless monsters and everything. That would be like a factor that like the race might not only seem to have to the same as like process in order for like the eventual bringing down of like the faceless monster and like spreading of like the upside down to like the real world and everything. Certainly not the range. So like I'm thinking right now, the race will be only putting on a fake act to like ensure that basically to like spark that ripple effect through 11 right now to get 11 by getting 11 curious about like that other girl in like the rainbow rope, which would be Gally. So like to have 11 to, for like Gally and for 11 to find Gally and that way to get 11 to find Gally and for them to together to like look for like the other uh, failed experiments of like individuals who are like failed experiments of like runner and for them to like eventually form a team. This will be what like careers will be right now attending. It's definitely my position and person. The minimum remuneration right now is that basically since like careers might have gone through that most of the experiments while being part of that metal part. So experiments that careers have gone through might have been long before like 11 was born and like the experiments were like eventually performed on 11 it might be like the case with the new pyramid. So like I'm doing precisely because of this reason, like it might have been long before and not just that reason before 11 the experiment began with like 11 it's definitely my brain. So like especially because of the reason I'm looking for that definitely it wouldn't be just like continuous information, it wouldn't be just like future powers alone that like the race will be having, but like even like the telepathic powers that 11 have, like I'm sort of the rare in like the person would be not only just having telepathic power, but like it will be having telepathic power towards like greater intensity than like I'm looking like she would just be able to like raise like the minds of like the people around her alone, but like she would be also like the raise telepathic power in like the person would be like far superiorly stronger and then when compared to even 11, that like the race will be able to also manipulate her own like the things that will be present in like her own mind as well, depending on the situation. That way, like that the race would be like consciously like like putting in like the memories right now in like, the present of like the rainbow sunshine and for that for to that way to hide the truth of what would possibly be the truth from 11 that is areas would be like perfectly fine right now and like everything like that the areas would be right now actually thinking about like wanting to set things about like 11 and all that like I was going areas would be hiding all that or like manipulating all that memories and basically forcefully and consciously putting in like the memories of like the sunshine and rainbows uh, and for that like sunflower and rainbows and all that solely for like her daughter Jane solely to have uh, her daughter Jane play the role of like saving like the world and humanity and basically that way 11 would be finally able to like properly return back to the race and so that the race could like live normalize with like 11 to that to do this like I'm doing like failure race right now like the person will be like consciously using her like superior levels of like telepathic power to like basically forcefully and consciously manipulate her own the things in her own mind, especially myversity and chance for what will be happening right now. It's a new thing. So like the new things right now is of like 11 right now through like the dark web trying to like communicate with like Addy. That definitely the scenario that I'm exploring is for like 11 totally within the dark web like seeing Caddy and like I'm looking like the scenario to be like and 11 will be walking up towards like Caddy and like the dark web and 11 will be like speaking to Caddy. That definitely it's like Cali as well has like superpowers like everything like Cali so the like at that point is still like seeing 11 and I'm also from like Cali recognizes the Cali I'm also from at that point is like recognizes 11 like the scenario that I'm talking but like I'm looking like totally it will be like the scenario I'm looking will be totally contrary to like 11 justification because like I'm looking at after like seeing the memories of like stories about like that literature in like the rainbow and playing with stuff and all that. Like, I'm looking like 11 was only expecting but then like the dark word I'm looking at 11 would be like only expecting for like carrying to in that act in like a friend to be acting like a friendly man towards like 11 but like I'm looking like within like Cali's mind like I'm looking that that the days of like by Cali was trapped in like that energy that of like in the rainbow room of the unavailable because might have been still given to the person would be deep down within Carrie's mind would be remaining as like a trauma. It's definitely very it would be something that that it would be like the last thing Carrie would want to like remember ever in her life. So it's definitely memorable. So Carrie would be of like such a situation of like mind right now in the represents the female of the so like I'm looking like one flag Cali would be like considering the scenario to be like one flag 11 would be fine like communicate with like Cali within the dark world and I'm looking definitely Cali after like Cali would have spent by now Cali would have spent like more than a year as part of like that group of that please definitely remember to return that as well might have obviously changed carries like cap and personality as well. So certainly my bring so like I'm looking like the scenario to be like the moment carry in the scenes 11 within like the last word and like carry would be like instantly recognizing 11 but like at that point self like I'm even carry getting extremely irritated and angry and I'm looking like uh, carry telling 11 to like to totally leave her alone and to like get lost will be along the lines of the in an extremely angry manner like I'm like Cali could be telling 11 to go away. It's like the scenario that I'm looking and Cali should be like using her own superpowers to like that cut off 11 from like the last way stable like scenario that I'm looking. That's why like I'm looking at the scenario to be like Cali using her superpowers and basically sending 11 out of like the dark world and that way Cali forcefully and consciously breaking the communication between 11 and Cali. That will be happening within the dark world right now. But like sharing the scenarios that I'm going to talk about and the frame. Basically, according to my opinion, what terms of people like the scenario really like after like meeting 11 right now, within that the dark world, it's like the scenario that I'm going to carry would be like totally extremely disturbed because like it would be like things that Captain Carry might have been totally frustrated trying to like forget and might have even forgotten and moved on, might have totally moved on, and Candy might have totally moved on with her life even while being part of like the group of teams and everything like Carrie might have felt that or like might have been seeing that living such a life as like maybe even like like as from Carrie's point of view, Carrie might have felt that as like peaceful when compared to that all the extremities she might have gone through during like the experiment within that kind of of that pandemic about the middle so like everything that piece that like Cali might have had for like a few years or like maybe a whole year to like the person like Cali losing all that peaceful feeling like the moment like 11 you'll be like communicating to like Cali from like the after it's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like from that point on I'm Cali being probably feeling thoroughly disturbed and I'm like that disturbance like each day like from that from the very day on like I'm looking that disturbance to look at Cali more and more each day and Cali clearing like the positive like 11 showing up to that fine Cali like scenario that I'm looking and then for me usually that exactly happens with like the scenario that I'm looking because like even though according to my the concept of like Cali getting angry at 11 and cutting forcefully using a superpower and cutting 11 off from like the dark world is like the scenario that I'm looking at. Still I'm looking like at least 11 would be like giving that absolute high top priority to like the words and like the intent of like the real mother that like after like 11 would be putting that beyond like or putting that desire of her mother as like giving the maximum priority to that alone so that I'm looking like even though uh Cali would be forcefully cutting off that even from like the communication from like the dark world like until like even desperately let's something to like find Cali like within the scenario that I'm looking for and I'm looking that way like even eventually ending up even eventually in like space or I'm looking eventually ending up even finding Cali it's like the scenario that and I was like it won't be like even actually finding Cali but like I'm looking even that totally will be badly searching for Cali to find Cali alone and that space even which is saving is like the scenario that I'm and examples going like the scenario to be that one of the elements would be like losing all hope. That I'm looking like it will be that at that point that basically that and you don't be that feeling like giving up on like relentless search for like Cali. It will be at that point that like totally by sheer coincidence that 11 and Cali will be totally running into each other. And I'm still thinking about the as for like that moment happening within that half-gate place. It's definitely one of the gamers for definitely I'm still thinking about the so that like Mad Max would definitely be carry. So like I'm looking at so scenario to be like it would be after like eventually after the like eventually 11 ending up totally meeting Mike with like the scenario that I'm looking at turning back to like the friendship gang of like Mike and of them like in the scenario that so like it will be after that like that and it's like eventually after that like they will be usually like sorting out like 11 like issues with like mic and everything connecting to like 19 and all that. Like it will be after all that will be sorted out, and once like 11 will be that fully returning back to like the project again of my and other then once they would all be like one day it would be like going up to like the arcade to play the games. Like at that point is when I was when like only by sheer points when like 11 would be like of running into carry. While carry would be like as like Mad Max would be playing those games like the in that arcade like the scenario that I'm doing. So like at that point I'm looking at two shocking surprises for like the gang of like and friends. One would be like 11 totally running into Candy, and like the other would be like basically Mike and like friend like and like specifically shockingly finding out that like Mad Max was not Maxine within that time, but it was Candy. Like also made in the ambition. So like the new mention right now as for like 11 not being able to like find Cali to like the dark void, while the very same 11 was able to like find Syria through like the dark void. I think like from like of like house like on the print to be because of like Syria's like it would definitely due to like delivering into reducing like Cali using her superpower to like most likely having using her superpower to like always ensure to like basically the Cali might be using her superpowers in such a way to like always ensure that basically no one ends up ever being able to like find Cali within like through the dark void of definitely one with race. So like I'm throwing like the so like I'm throwing like the whole water like the water tank like communications like experiment like that might have been something that like Pranab might have done to done with carry as well as certainly so like I'm looking that way like carry might not have fully succeeded in that, but like I'm looking like still carry might have access that might have been able to like access like the dark void and like just barely might have back then made like a communication before like Kelly might have been instantly like returned back from like the dark world. So like in that way like and since like Kelly might have either definitely not been able to like do that again, especially in my situation. That way might have been how that Kelly's experience might have um, ended up in a failure back then, especially when I was so like I'm thinking maybe in Kelly's case, like Kelly might have only been able to like make that communicate through the dark world only once in her life during like the experience of growing up. Might have been or might have happened. So like definitely this way like Cali might be well fully aware of like the dark void, and that's what like why not communication being possible through like the dark void and everything. So like okay, so because of this reason and because like after that eventually Cali so something like eventually after that during and after that friend of like I'm like Cali might have slowly like years past like I'm Cali like the proposal might have slowly ended up becoming stronger and stronger, especially what might have happened. So like then like I'm doing Cali might have like the last thing like the different like Cali might have been struggling to like forget all the trauma from like that and like that way. So like I'm as part of like trying to like forget about all this like Cali might have fade away. Ran away from like to the town of Hawkins where like the lovely about ways when like Cali might have ran far away from like Hawkins then like I'm like Cali might have also like used as like Cali superpowers usually or the years might have grown like Cali might have the last thing Cali might have wanted to like remember would be about her phase of like uh, or to connect with like anything or anyone from like the about ever in her life would be like the last thing Cali might have wanted. So like I'm sure Cali might have eventually like over the years might have it had that increase in her superpowers and like might have eventually been able to like easily by herself might have been able to without like the help of like any water tank like Daddy by herself might have been eventually been able to like access the dark world and all that. And at that point, it's like the very first thing that Kelly might have done might have been to like use the superpower to like hurt of to like use the superpower in such a way to be cut her off from like the dark world so that like even if like anyone does their absolute best through like the dark world to like communicate and reach out to like Kelly, like it simply wouldn't be possible would be might be what might have happened in that capacity given us facing theory and predict. And this will be the reason for like 11 while 11 was able to like reach out to that career through like the dark world. I think that's from Hopper's house like another the same 11 not being able to like reach carry will be because of three. And like even careers as well would be having like in like the person would be having that power to like cut off like the communication so like the dark words are and creating a situation where like absolutely no one using like the dark word to be able to like reach the wave so the thing is the brain. So get like in career case, like careers might have already not done that, especially because of like careers through like the sunshine and rainbow repetitions for like since like what the race it might have been such an extremely high priority to like have 11 sub for like Cali, definitely not just Cali, but like for like to have 11 fight all the remaining survivors of like the failed experiment of like from like all the way from like once to like 10. It's definitely not the chance for like that way for like eventually as like the situation with like the bad one for the kind of thing is getting worse and worse for like so that like 11 would be able to like form an army of like superheroes with like with like individuals of like failed experiment of like kind of like all of them teaming up forming a team and using their superpower completely for like the greater good to like basically to stop like the faceless monsters and like to destroy like the faceless monsters and like push and eventually play that ultimate user role in that bringing about like the end of like spreading of like, the battle world into like the real world and saving like the real world from like spreading of the battle world and saving like this new information that I'm sitting out on the definitely so right now that's for like so that career sister like the game phone for right now but definitely for like this phone for single phone for eventually definitely would be recording in like phone and just like the realizing that is really relevant is still alive even though the person definitely no and like them totally like looking for relevant is like the scenario that I'm definitely because like I'm doing the like I'm doing like for phones and like remaining team among which like the ones that will be surviving because like I'm looking like the majority of them getting like instantly wiped out right now is like itself in the percentage itself to like the current army of like attack of like the face of the on like the energy level itself like I'm looking like the majority of like the team getting wiped out so still I'm looking like Owens and maybe one or two scientists alone. One or two or three scientists alone like managing to like survive by escaping around like Hopper as well as like those as well as into like the fan world from like the game to like the level is still my own range and other people on this. Yet like I'm doing Owens would be still having like all the security forces like outside uh, security forces still like I'm doing like Owens would like them still would be like very much like since like during like the invasion attack of like okay not the, like I'm during like the security forces won't be present within like the won't be getting summoned within into like the majority of the security forces won't be getting summoned within into like the energy level so like especially because of that like I'm during the like going surviving like going and you trying to surviving like in scenario that I'm so even then like they will be having like the uh, those like great number of like security forces like still by their side. So like I'm sort of like that they like Owen still and I'm going to make it will be like once like Owen will be Owen will be surviving and like eventually after like the current attack of like the victory not to be over like I'm giving like Owen and others like from like the battle world they will be like eventually once again returning back to like the end of the buffet. So that's the scenario that I'm looking at that point. And after like a few days after that, like I'm doing that, oh, maybe when like going to the, or like I'm looking after returning back to Southeast Asia itself, like I'm doing like going to like totally finding out about like 11 still being alive, still being able to record. The security was according to like the orders of like Owens, but like I'm doing it to also like all of like the remaining failed experiments that including Cali as well as like the unrevealed remaining failed experiments that who as well as the different things maybe like only allied to like the thousand and but maybe like just one or two among like the remaining failed experiments maybe not being able to like survive due to like side effects of it the experiment like then was like having of survive to like the person but like that's like the maximum that I'm looking like the only one or two of like the failed experience not being able to like make it and survive to the but like I'm doing the entirely the remaining failed experiment individuals to be so their lives will not open. So like I'm doing them or like on like totally sending like the people to like find and get the regeneration one that and to possibly bring them to like the another level and make them fight and bring down like the people the army of like more of like the scenario that I'm looking at. So that this might be a question right now and this will be all happening solely due to like current phone call of that taking definitely my through which like eventually that also be finding out like the survival of like event and like the chain reaction happening and the idea even happening for like owns to like to use them as like an arm of that army of like superpowers, so like they need to bring down like the business models, like in scenarios that I'm looking at, like the name of the option right now is that basically the race might not definitely would definitely give us the reason that the race would definitely have that with the fight out and so that with the fight the race might out for there right now always for fame like basically like Becky so they are doing everything by like making that phone call and like so before that happens to have like her daughter like her daughter Jane realize that as to like what the race right now in like the present want like 11 to do is to like basically to like search and look for like Cali, look for that girl, other girl in like the rainbow room, like for 11 to be able to realize that this is exactly what like careers in like the present desire from 11 and for 11 to realize that before like Becky makes that phone call for that like once like 11 would be like forced to like run away from like a career's home that even at that point like 11 would be like leaving that house with like the intent to like so fix up for and like look for like Cali the name of the reimbursement. So like this might have been and the race like the race staff might have been to like make all this happen while also ensuring to like trick Jane and to not have Jane find out that the race is like perfectly fine. So like with that argument itself to like also have like Jane to find out like the present desire and for like what the race is right now desiring for like Jane to do right now like the present is definitely might have been like the race's task and that this might be the so it's definitely and that would be exactly what like might have happened right now. Like something definitely my was the reimbursement right. So that's reimbursement right now. But that will be it's like 11 switching like 11 like I'm looking like 11 like I'm doing 11 like straight is of it only where the randomly casually working usually sourcing all sorts of places within like Illinois and still not being able to like find gases like scenario that and I'm looking at 11 slowly starting to like lose hope and like more like 11 movie just casually wandering into like an alleyway like area and they are like a like movie and like 11 movie like so they're running into Cali and Cali at that point will definitely be but along with that gang of robots it's like the scenario that I'm so some of like 11 straight walking up to them and like I'm running for gang of robots like only by 11 here and I'm 11 straight away walking up to Cali and I'm definitely Cali would be like instantly recognizing 11, 15 minutes in because of like them both having like telepathic powers and on top of that like a little like 11 would be trying to like make Cali understand 11 as like 11 would straight away talking about like some of the when he's another thing like 11 something Cali still that 11 what it is since like 11 even just now having seen that Cali from the time from like the dark world like definitely 11 in the situation it's like recognize Cali like the scenario that I'm living right 11 yeah, within Illinois next. There was another that I'm doing. So like I'm doing that 11 trying to that make Cali understand things in and I was straight away like one like 11 would be like talking about like the lab and like runner and all that. So it's like at that point in time, like Gally would be like instantly like not only realizing like who 11 is, but like after delivering at that point, when Gally would be getting extremely enraged with like instead or trauma is like Gally, like Gally crossing like Gally might have been really trying to like forget things and that and move on from and might have even forgotten about like and all that like was into like Gally so like and basically Gally like uh, would be like getting depressed at like 11 and I would bring carry roles with like getting telling 11 to like develop and carry role at that point put on a fake act and like you know 11 is on like what 11 is even saying and then the point straight away like and I'm preparing like a scenario to be like initially it would be like the other robot and also carry that would be like for 11 years and like would be telling learn to like go away and to finish level. That's another that I'm so like at that point self but you don't look getting angry and be about to use substance of course but like right before learning anything of like I'm doing carry would be that probably shouting out to like 11 to like get off and then get away. That's the scenario that I'm going. So like at that point like due to like carry saying that like 11 not using substance of course that way like the others not realizing about like 11 how to exactly the thing can flex of course that is carry. Like the scenario that I'm doing. So like that way still 11 could be only giving them for like the time being. Still, like I'm looking like 11 would be probably stopping them, and looking like the scenario to be like, or like I'm looking like 11 probably deciding to like temporarily leave them, and I'm looking like still 11 would be like thinking of that. That's when I was looking like 11 would be totally that strictly that finish hard on trying to like figure out how to like easily to form that like friendship with like Ali and like at least from 11 point of view like 11 like current mindset itself would be to like not only just like to meet and find and talk to like Ali alone but like I'm thinking to like uh, since like 11 had seen that basically of the career like basically collecting like the files of that all the uh, paid experiments of like or like I'm saying like the plan would be to like not only like meet Cali but like to totally uh like along with like eventually along with like Cali for like 11 to like basically for them to get together like search for and find all the remaining failure experiments of like to find all of them and to find all of them and like to get them all and bring them all towards like the real might be what like 11 would be like only planning supplement with paper. So like I'm looking at 11 will be only thing that like basically and especially with like Becky totally that take his phone for like 11 even think that like I'm gonna maybe like 11 plan would be to like basically after like meeting Gary like for like 11 to like find all the remaining failed experiments and for them to like totally and then for like maybe them to like culturally enter into like the dark void and like meet and talk to like careers within like from like the dark void for like for 11 at that point after like finding one of the remaining failed individuals like I'm looking at so 11 to then like go to like the dark void and like talk to some other careers and like to find out what is it that careers want to do for 11 to do next. It would be more like 11 will be planning something else the next so definitely my personal impression is for like the scenario to be like carry would be the probably putting 11 away initially as like 11 would be trying to like uh and to like rest of that whole friendship with like carry and all that is definitely about which like everyone would be like not having much of like a memory and or definitely no really. So still like another thing like to achieve the real which are like another thing that 11 trying to like form that friendship with like carry and so when carry or like pushing 11 away maybe even carry using like totally pushing 11 away and telling 11 to like get love and I'm like in this scenario to be like eventually after like one of like the next piece like bank of like I'm looking like carry and her gang like basically as they will be like driving and they be trying to like take from like the top like I'm looking like don't then like I'm putting like in terms of like it would be like a greater huge team of like podcast that would be like that time that would be like facing up that carry and her gang is like it's another that was like of like their they would have like by now done like a great number of like repeated copies. So like I'm by now the so like I'm doing like this time like I'm doing like the really like a huge chain of like of stuff actually chasing after carries like like the scenario that I'm so at that point I was doing carry using her superpower as usual to like yeah, but still I'm looking like that it will be like a well coordinated chase by like the box or like I'm looking like them being extremely persistent with like the chase and like regardless of carry, particularly using a football still like it can like their van being chased after by the ball like so now that I'm doing so like I'm doing that way eventually like compared to something for like somehow catching up to that carry van is like the scenario that I'm like as they are about to get captured by the dog that I was maybe at that point that especially 11 showing up and basically 11 lags so like or like I'm doing something like 5 points with that like Danny's van will be probably running towards that 11 will be by sheer coincidence. So that while they were not able to get captured by like the perfection of like the scenario that happened. So like at that point, like even moving her superpower because like Callie by then like would have exhausted out her superpower and Callie won't be able to like use her superpower anymore at that point. Like the stamina of Callie would be like done for at that point. So Callie won't be able to like use her superpower and like the robbers, the other robbers will be getting extremely angry with like Callie for not being able to like use her superpower and that while they will be about to get captured by the top video and like they will be only running towards that van will be totally running into that where like 11 would be like the scenario. Like the area where like 11 would be set the scenario they have so like 11 straight away that would be using her superpowers and basically would be that like stopping that final stage of like that will be like taking out of carry and the advantage like the scenario that so that solely due to the and that solely due to like 11 using bucket for like carry and again like basically managing like a safe content of that time like the scenario that so like after that like I'm doing like 11 totally once again finding Cali and that the Robert again. So like at that point I was thinking that depth totally straight away taking quite a liking towards like the Robert gang taking quite a liking towards like 11 because of like 11 having just a very different supervisor that of Cali, and they will be like totally badly wanting 11 to like join that Robert gang. Because like from their point of view, like they will be totally think that is really but like on top of Cali, like them having like two individuals having like superpowers, like they will be that they will be like successful in each and every single one of like the heights from that point on will be along the line they will be paying. So like I'm just luckily that's them totally badly wanting then they extremely nice to like 11 and then totally badly I think that wanting 11 to like join the team and all that and like the scenario that I'm doing. But Cali still will be like extremely encouraged with like 11 and will be like totally showing that it's like the scenario that I'm doing. So like I'm doing like team 11 would be like reminding every time Cali will be like team like Cali is a reminder of what like past from us like Cali in the winter really trying to like forget about new so at that point, I was super like Gary would be like getting extremely enraged with like the situation being like 11 like with like the remaining team members like trying to like recruit 11 to like over again. So like I'm going like Cali at that point would be like telling 11 that like he needs to drop quietly towards that 11 with like 11 except there's another that I'm doing and that will like that will be Cali's attempt to like basically to push 11 away to have 11 lead on the road from like and to stop 11 from like joining from Jan. Uh, like the scenario that I was doing. So like my Cali and 11 will be talking right labor, like Cali will be trying to like push 11 away and to be telling once again 11 to like get lost and leave alone. Like it will be during this time that I'm looking for like while it will be like Cali and 11 all by themselves and like having a fire talk it will during this time that I'm looking like Owens like security force will be like showing up and will be like capturing both Cali and 11 like the scenario that I'm looking for. So like I'm looking at that point like Cali would be like badly exhausted out of like all the superpowers. So like it would be 11 alone that would be having like superpowers like at that point like would be having stamina years of superpowers like in Cali's case like at that point like during like it will be like in that I'm looking that for interacting with the zone after like Cali and the team like shaping like the shaping by the top due to like so due to like 11 like and so during then like Cali superpowers would be totally exhausted. So like I'm looking security was response like straight away of capturing Cali. And as they will be about trying to like capture 11 like like 11 using a safe approach and attacking them. So like at that point, the company like on those security forces like uh, threatening 11 with like taking Cali's like the scenario that I'm living. That way like 11 being forced to like actually get captured by like the security forces like on this like the scenario that I'm living. In that way like I'm living like at that point like Cali instead of 11 forcefully being taken back to Hawkins and basically to back to like the energy number base. It's like the scenario that I'm looking at that point, it only Owen that only that creating the man. I was like Owen select only that both at that point I come to from that both 11 and as well as Gary will be like extremely enraged due to like the captivity and everything and won't be like showing will be showing that as good as like towards like Owens and like able use nature as well towards like what like the scenario that so like at that point we can like Owens totally uh, bringing carry and because I am certain by that time that I'm certain that the that Owens and that the remaining few scientists might along with like Hopper and George and Will might have escaped to like the parallel world and might have that they escaped from like the attacks of like the army executive models and everything. Still like the army executive might have taken out like the majority of like the scientists and like also might have thoroughly destroyed like the with other random things that new so like I'm looking like while 11 as well as Calico is brought to that hopefully brought to like ten of level. At that point, like I'm looking at both of them would be confused seeing that seeing the damage kind of like a state like they're not will thing. So at that point, I was like slowly bringing them to that location of like that underground living area and like I'm like showing them that like entirety of like that huge honeycomb like underground upside down holes, massive number of great number of holes that will have like the extremely huge the current state of like the shape open gate in the underground of like the energy laboratory like the extremely deep extent to which like the gate has like opened up to and extended and like huge like we believe that I'm going to bring that on showing that to like an extremely short tally as well as 11 where like I'm and so like the player premission where like simply was like 11 that has opened up like the gate to that within like the energy laboratory the player bring tally would be like having absolutely no idea what she's like witnessing, what is even this like huge gate and what this like great number of like honeycomb like holes within like the deep within like the underground of the and all that like Cali would be totally unaware of what all that is but like it even would be like seriously shocked who like even though like the realization of like what's going on as to like how much like the gate has that event has opened up has grown deep towards like the underground and all the situation within like the underground and about like those sports and everything like being happening through like the gate that like 11 had created like 11 totally like would be feeling that as good like that and guilt as well within 11 at that point is like the scenario that I'm looking so like I'm even behind like on like properly capturing and bringing 11 and carry like I'm looking also having like the plan of like an idea of like a strategy to like maybe since it was 11 that had opened up like the gate within like the laboratory like own plan I'm considering maybe also that's a possibility that I'm looking for like maybe your own plan at that point would be to like not only capture like 11 as and possible bring like 11 as well as carry alone to like the energy laboratory but like that ones might also send the black process to like also especially find all the remaining individuals who are like failed experiment of like and to like capture hopefully gather rendering all of them and to like use all of their combined superpowers to like basically shift flows like the case in like the energy laboratory. It's like the scenario that I'm doing. So like numbers in that way like by then like I'm looking at all the remaining individuals field experience individuals being captured and or by own school like an available rate and that that way like I'm doing like eventually managing to like convince them and basically then all agreeing to like use all of that because like once be like revealing to them how like it 50K is not often as soon as possible, like how like the parallel world would be like swallowing up like the real world would be along the lines like also will be telling them was like the scenario that I will find. So like that way like I'm doing that you are resulting in like I'm doing like all of them starting to like team up and to like and I'm looking all of them collectively using their superpowers, like all of like the field experience including like field experience individuals including like Cali and 11 collectively using their superpowers to like and attempting to like close like the open up gate extremely huge black amount of game within like the energy laboratory. And then failing at that, it's like for scenario that I'm looking. So like at that point I'm going to find like it will be at that point that I'm going to find that eventually that more like research would be that going would be done by like the own levels like team and then like eventually them figuring out that basically that like and all this like wines and like space monsters and it, everything is like already connected and there will be like them coming up maybe Owens coming up with like theory of like about this and they are being this like massive huge mother kind of like monster kind of like a so things within like the parallel world from which like all the like everything will be like spreading. So like this the positive like destroying that like being able to like destroy the entirety of like the entirety of like the wines and the gate and like great water and everything. So they are all connected like destroying that source of like for the creation of like the monsters and wines and everything to like the parallel world. So in that sort like simultaneously instantly destroying everything else completely like the monsters and like the wines and everything else and during the gate uh like the bad word simultaneously would be like a theory that like also becomes true. So like I'm looking at that point like maybe I was selling element to like through like the dark word to see if like the if like element can find such the source. It's like along the lines of the like so like in that way maybe 11 totally within the dark world, like totally seeing such a soul like that, which will be like a huge monster space. So like I will get like 11 won't be able to like know. The only thing 11 will be knowing that like a soul exists and like it exists somewhere within like the parallel world. So like and like I'm like the parallel world like wouldn't be like the paddleboard won't be just like the town of Hawkins alone, size of like the town of Hawkins alone, but like after like the paddleboard would be like in like the paddleboard like the entirety, the paddleboard is like the entirety of the size of like the real world. So mix collectively transformed and turned into like the dark gold paddleboard, so like the spreading of like the wine and fish and the like so like who have like the entirety of like that paddleboard, which would be like size of like, the entirety of like, the real world. They would have to like find out that source where that source is, like that source not represent to find it and deploy it. So like I'm just like the only thing through that dark world would be able to like, find out would be that like that source monster will be is exists in like the bad word, but they are exactly within like the bad word, they won't be able to like even not even be able to like find that out like it's an algorithm. And that way like I'm just like anything the army of like 11 as well as like all the failed experiments including like 11 including carry and then 11 as well, then forming a team and like according to like for us like heading off to like the paddleboard to like find that source motion and to like exploit collectively using the to like being good enough that I'm really right. So like I'm doing even before that like Mike and like the others would be totally finding out about like and big and like so like I'm thinking they are asking like stories it's like in the scenario that I'm going to go so putting so like I'm doing while like 11 and like carry and like also remain still experiments of like run up would be like heading off to like the parallel that ultimate goal to like basically uh to move in stealth and basically even though they have to out like they would be forced to like move that up so that would be how much of like the value would be that infested by all this spaceless monsters and like the shadow monsters and everything. So like I'm for them to like go a stealthy manner for them to like find the layer of like the that absolute source and really for them to like destroy the source. So like in that goal and in that ultimate mission I'm also definitely couldn't just be like carry as well as like everyone else but the remaining played experiments everyone that would be heading along to like the path. But like along with them with mixing like Hopper as well as that Nancy and John as well as like Steve as well as like even Mike Lucas and Dustin as well would be like somehow that we managing to that kind of into like the parable to that achieve for like very significant to achieve that very significant. So like so we collectively all come like that would be entering into like the parable to like destroy that so like something to scenario that maybe I'm doing like Owens as well entering into like the parable to like achieve that exact mission as well. It's also like that Owen circle as well like a few like scientists as well as like an entire army of like security forces as well. Owen circle trying to like the battle was with the same intent of like the board and like security forces will be all armed with like main process and so like the scenario that I'm looking at. So this much of like thing just enough that I was probably correct and not famous. Then this is according to my preparation and living that in that eventual and the army of like people that will be heading over to like the Falbert to like find and destroy that source monster and basically that they save humanity and like the real world from like the Falbert. I'm looking for like in that whole entire thing like I'm looking at to also be Maxine as well as like her brother as well. And his brother as well will be part of that day. Certainly maybe straight. It was like I'm looking by then like Maxine's brother would be seriously humbling down aspect. It's also like that in the scenario that I'm looking. It was like I'm looking at even like the in scenario where like after like 11 as well as like Cali, those different like would be getting captured by like the military force of like Owen from Illinois and would be taken forcefully taken to like Hawkins lab. Like and as they would be like failing at like basically at like closing of like the gate as like along with like 11 and carry like the remaining of like the freedom experiments individual that would be like captured and brought and even collectively they would be failing to like close that gate and everything like I'm like then like the it would be like then like once like through most likely through that 11 through like the dark void like being able to like see that so existing somewhere within like the parallel world and once like that mission and like that plan will be starting to be created to that basically to find that source monster and destroy like the monster but like before that during that time like while like Owens and his like team would be like busily preparing for like that ultimate mission, making all the preparations for like that ultimate mission to like destroy like that source monster from like the battle world. During this time I'm also like 11 only to be telling Owens that basically 11 wants to like go and see Mike and all of them her friends and all of them was like the into scenario that I'm doing. So and I'm looking by then like everyone would have forgiven that and they might it's also like a little bit towards the next film also like about that I'm doing and you would be only wanting to like feeling that wanting like see Mike and other to like the scenario that I'm doing. So and I'm looking by then like since like I'm looking currently Owens would be like mainly in charge of like the end of the level and was looking like Owens like also making the decision might have made the decision to like basically see that cancel like the whole experiment to like for to basically create like that ultimate weapon and to like hand over like the weapon for like money and all that. Like I'm wondering that experiment being cancelled by Owens like which rather that I'm looking definitely there will be like enough looking like Owens. So like I'm looking like Owens would be that canceling that. And so like the remaining team members finally agreeing to that because like the situation during that point would be like an extremely dangerous and stuff in situation where like the parallel world would be like more and more spreading and into like the real world and would be that when about to that like it would they don't have much time that much years left before like spreading of like the parallel world into like the real world would be even crossing like the round pocket. And at that point like all of the secrets will be running across like the world and all that will be like situation. So like I'm looking at the collectively because of all this situation like I'm like at that point like even if like they are able to like still if the rest of like the world like joins in and if they collectively stop like Japan spreading the virus but into like the river still like I'm sure like one all that would be over like there will be like serious consequence for like once and like the remaining kind of but keeping that a secret from like the what and even causing such don't say potential kind of like scenario themselves for like the rest of the world. So like I'm sure there will be serious implications and consequences like the rest of the world will be finding out about me. Will be also like kind of like a situation which like once and like the remaining thing would be so like I'm sure like according to like only like them totally listening to like conscious models and giving up on like the experiments uh, to like basically using 11 to like using 11 as like the ultimate weapon and to like hand over 11 and basically to make all that money. That experiment like would be cancelled according to like point of order. So like I'm looking that way like 11 finally being free to like basically without having like the remaining of like friends being like coming up with 11 to like chapter 11 like 11 at that point finally being free. And like basically get on the condition on the deal that will be struck by 11 and like Owens that basically 11 and like the carry and like the remaining page of experiment like individuals like them or collectively basically want like it to be like done with this like absolute question to like send his like forces to like the parent world to like find that safe and destroy the so at that point like 11 as well as carry and all the remaining individuals with like superpowers will not be cooperating and would be like helping out with them in their attempt to like destroy that source of the certainly frame. So like after that deal would be struck with that 11 and like the remaining individuals then like once like at that point I was like 11 and 11 will be free to like roam around like the towns like talking without having anyone coming after 11 like after 11. So like that way like I'm during that time like I'm like maybe it would be when like finally 11 would be uh, seeing Mike and like Mike will even be realizing that like is still alive and all that. So like I'm that way like I'm like the reunion of like the gang of friends of like Mike the friend of it and 11 and will that all happening maybe at that point it's like would be like about to do it and so like it would be during then like I'm doing like while they will be all having fun like it would be during then that I'm doing that Maxine's brother would be like once again showing up to that basically with like Maxine as well will be like part of like the and like all the issues between like 11 and Maxine will be like getting solved and I'm not Maxine as well being part of like the and I'm once again like Maxine's brother like totally happening to like see them all together. So like I'm seeing at that point like Maxine brother like we once again trying to like bully Mike and all of that. And at that point would be when like the moment where like I'm just like finally Maxine's brother would be getting this like huge ego cut and would be getting humbled in front of like 11 to like super powerful like seeing the scenario that I'm doing. That way like I'm doing like that to be like too shock to like Maxine's brother and that was when like that whole that whole situation like I'm looking like would be even happening maybe in front of like the other students because like maybe it would be happening in like the field in like public school as well all the way that I'm but like I'm like everyone won't be without making that without having anyone find out that like they don't have to about like I'm so like 11 in that stealthy manner, exactly like how Eleven had basically attacked Roy in front of like others here, like while maintaining that stealth, like I'm sort of like in similar manner, like I'm sort of like Eleven attacking Max's brother and that way Max's brother getting thoroughly embarrassed, like and having like he was thrust in front of like the entirety of like the Hawkins War. Like the scenario that I was in. So like that as well, like ultimately ending up with like Max's brother like literally crumbling down. And I'm just like eventually Max's brother that way that something down was like Max's brother like to the point where like I'm just like eventually Maxine would be like having that real talk with like her brother eventually and like I'm just like finally Max's brother calming down and I'm just like eventually Max's brother as well finding out about like this like ultimate mission about like the situation with like the paddleboard and spreading and all that like as well like Max's brother really finding out about that as well as like also like about that and right? So that way, like I'm just hoping that eventually all the select failures are done in like as part of like Ponce's like army that will be heading on to like the battle world to find the source monster and fight the source monster. Like it will be just them, but like it will be also like them plus like 11 and Kelly and like the remaining experiments Sheila experiment individuals as well as like Michael and Maxine and like Nancy and Johnson as well as like Steve as well as like Maxine brother as well as well as well as Joyce definitely and Will definitely did that and Joyce and like Hopper as well that them all collectively would be the ultimate final team that would be really finally heading over to like the parallel world to like find the source monster and spoiling so stuff and basically save then that they of like humanity from like the parallel world and like certain parallel world like the scenario that I'm going to bring on great. So during like activity during that final mission that I'm looking like definitely that Nancy as well as like Jonathan as well as Steve as well as like Michael sort of like them all will be like spending a lot of time together in their whole like while they will be like making their way and progress through like the battle world and everything. So that eventually like initially I'm looking like still there will be like that just like between them, but like after like situation gets stuff like entering each of them, helping each of them out from like the fifth module and everything, and that only brings them more closer together at the good point that I'm looking that when like eventually like by the time like your mission would be over, like I'm looking at Steve as well as like Nancy as well as Jonathan as well as Michael Brother, they would all be ending up being the rational today until like in this scenario that I'm only bringing on brain. So right now that actually like Murray government that mainly stays outside like the town of province. It stays like outside the town of province. And there's maybe Murray government as well might be seeing that the very same Illinois like 11 right now. It's also like about to develop so like anything maybe uh Murray government okay running into 11 as well. So also like about to develop 11 as well as Murray government okay running into future at some point within like the town of Illinois that's like allowing you to in Block Cali. It's also like an event of scenario that I'm going to bring up again. But looking on the preemption right now, much for like the great number of spiders in that active arms that I'm to bring the that is just hallucination. There won't be actually those great number of spiders on hand. But like I'm really to be only mind hallucination power, which like Cali might be having the team of there. So that to totally manipulate another person's back mind and basically for to create hallucination in that and that to like using Cali's power super power to like forcefully create like hallucinations in like other people's mind would be like one of like the powers of Cali like the scenario that I'm going to bring. On top of like Cali already having revealed to like how that elements like same kind of like telekinesis superpower and this would be one other power that Cali would have instead of so like maybe in like the case of Cali since like 11 has already been revealed to have like telekinesis as well as telepathic powers. Like in the case of Cali and the Wolverine, maybe it would be telekinesis as well as like hallucination create power that like Cali would have it. It's also like my personal temperature right now. But you know, Crimson right now comes for like 11 right now pressing Cali and I've seen Slippery like I'm going that would probably be a foreshadowing of like a future scenario where like I'm doing definitely Cali has since like Cali has this power of like mind translation and hallucination creation like I'm doing definitely Cali eventually in like the future I'm going to like in an attempt to like get out of like a transport like I'm definitely bring Cali creating creating a mind hallucination of that it's clone of Cali itself. So, like this won't be real, but like I'm doing Cali creating such hallucination, while understanding that maybe few possible scenarios where like Carrie might be doing that, like like it will be either while points and his team would be like eventually like points of like security forces would be like trying to like capture Carrie and you know, maybe at that point like Carrie as in like an attempt to like escape maybe like using such a strategy while like from while hiding like Carrie like manipulating their minds to like basically and making them see a clone of Gary, which won't be like that with Gary, and basically running away and basically to distract them and to have them run after that fake Gary, while the real Gary will be hiding shirt in the film. Gary uses such a strategy either against like Owen's security force or like I'm doing initially let them secure while Gary will be like as part of the mission to find like the source of the thing like the bad world and destroy like the source and create like the real world from the bad world like maybe as part of the mission while Cali along with like everyone and others would be like entering into that the parallel world. Maybe at that point while they would be in some sort of like a tough spot while they would be like getting cornered by some monster that faces monster or something like that. Maybe at that point like Cali using such visual hallucination clones like just Cali running away and have and that causing like this monster chasing after such clones and that allowing making it possible for Cali to be like escape from that spot or like to be able to like save others from that spot. It's also like an individual scenario that I'm totally putting another preemption right. So like the new preemption right now for like Cali right now being so extremely emotional after like seeing like I'm going to be facing because of like but in 11 case like 11 have has like absolutely no memory of that Cali at the time like the memory creates so 11 like I'm doing so then totally the opposite in the case of Cali. While in the case of Cali, like I'm looking at there will be that different with like I mean like the multiple differences like it shouldn't be just in their house alone, but like I'm looking the case of memory as well, there will be that differences between like Cali and the but like in the case of Cali, like I'm looking Cali might have that picture perfect like sharp memory of each and every single day that even back when Cali and Eleven was like so extremely young, like, even when Cali was so extremely young, like each and the sharp memory in detail that like kind of like as like a picture or like a video like so that extent of quality would be like around the levels of like the memory that like Cali would be having of each of those days that like she spent there in that rainbow was like of having just 11 alone to like just talk to as like a friend like basically the each and every single day that she had spent there in like the energy laboratory for the emperor and all the experiments and like all the trauma she had gone through and all the experience that she had gone through like even like the minute detail about that would be that even to the present day would be in Cali's memories, especially my memories. So like I'm looking like Cali might back then might have already shared that memories of like the friendship with like 11, especially memories like maybe I'm looking right now that like Cali might not know anything at all of like the dark web or definitely remember the communication through like the dark web and all that like might have not been at all possible for Cali during that while Bernard had filmed their own Cali's definitely maybe it might be at that point that Bernard might have straight away after return of Cali like a failure women and might have then carrying away from the ground of the lab. It might have been one might have setting level. This might be the first and total reason for like any who's right now both emotional at like seeing 11 lakh. This and that time not even one having tried to like through the dark way, having tried to like communicate to 11 lakh. The reason Cali has never done that into the present is certainly because of like Cali, having at to like entering into to be able to like enter into the dark world and make communication to the person. And not only that, but Cali won't be even aware of like such a dark web communication being possible or like a concept like that. This definitely going to be able to support. Definitely I'm also doing yet like I'm looking at definitely 11 it's like 11 percent like I'm looking like 11 totally teaching Cali how to like communicate through like the dark web. Definitely like 11 totally training and like making Cali be able to like communicate through like the dark web like any of the scenarios that I'm going to go over. Some of the maybe through like carry process like I'm talking like usually having that side effect for 11 the like I'm doing like through carry process like into the 11 like that for memory that won't that like 11 does have of like the state of like the time during 11 stage that he had spent like carry like I'm 11 like of time like slowly gaining more and more of that memory, more slowly gaining access to like more and more of that memory. Like the more 11 will be spending time with like carry. It's also like a probability that I'm looking rather than carry caring about like the things that then like I'm like even though Cali would be doing that like even more than that like I'm doing like some sort of like side effect kind of like a scenario of like Cali's purpose is like 11 resulting in like 11 slowly being able to like access more and more of that old memories of the days that while anyone had that absolute friendship with like Jan back there when they were trapped in the rainbow road. It's also like an usual position scenario that about the problem going on. And that at that point I come to like everyone getting so in the emotion exactly like how Gary is right now, emotional right now, like in this possible scenario as well that about the problem and everything. So considering maybe like a possible scenario where like right now considering maybe like Gary is deciding to like take 11 after like roughly 11 would be like revealing about that how her life was like basically after like because the Cali would be curious about like how 11 has ended up had managed like escape like for another laboratory and all that and made it so far like and everything like after like Cali had like was like taken out of like the energy laboratory like as like a free experiment might have been like so like there will be that curious in Cali so like I'm doing like so like I'm looking that way right now. I'm looking like 11, reading everything so about like 11 life so far to like Cali and everything in detail. And I'm looking like at that point like I'm looking Cali so he's suddenly realizing that like 11 doesn't still have like that sense of like an exposure to like the outside world or like the joys of like the outside world and everything. So like I'm looking Cali totally deciding like as like a big sister like I'm looking Cali deciding to like make 11 happy and I'm looking like Cali totally deciding to like so 11 around like the city of Illinois, like the scenario that I'm saying. Yet while Cali will be ensuring to like do that while maintaining that absolute stealth of like the sled because of like Cali being like a bad proper definitely know the limit. So like I'm that way like I'm putting Cali either in like a disguise or like like a stealthy manner. Like most likely I'm doing it through Cali putting on a disguise Cali would be like holding on to like 11 and then both would be like exploring like the city of Illinois, like the scenario that I'm in, spending that subjectly time together, it's like the scenario that I'm expecting. So like I was looking like while this would be happening, I was looking like all the other robot uh friends like Gary, like I'm putting like them would be in their face all by themselves. So like I'm looking at that point maybe like the cops will be finally figuring out like their base and that will be like raiding their base and will be like totally capturing them. The remaining gang members of Cali like the scenario that I'm putting. So like I'm thinking maybe by the time Cali and 11 will be like returning back to like their out the after their outing at while Cali and 11 will be returning back to their place like I'm doing like maybe Cali having that stop because like definitely there will be like a certain extent of like a conflict within like Cali and a bond within like Cali towards like proper gang members as well. So definitely I'm saying that because of Cali having might have spent so much time with them like because maybe like Cali might have been living with them and living this life and living with them for like maybe more than a year. So also like a bit of that. So like there will be a certain extent of like a bond he put in like carry towards like gang of the robbers actually was also like a to that episode. Like I'm while Cali and the scenario where like Cali and 11 after their outing they return back to the base only to find like then they're missing there. So like I'm looking like and like the place like screaming kind of like in that kind of like a sport kind of like a state as well as also like a video that I'm more like I'm looking like while Cali and 11 would be returning back to that way of that area. I'm focusing like maybe them like probably seeing that podcast around near to that place and everything like that from a distance like find seeing that the Cali like gang members being upset and taken away by the cop like scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking that way like I'm just like maybe carries that there is a scenario where I'm referring that carries that gang members like being taken to like station and being put into that a cell and sometimes put into like a cell and maybe like carry as well as like 11 maybe like making the whole joint infiltration using that support like making that alternate joint infiltration into that the station and then like maybe that them both like collectively by using the so like the rescue that carries that the remaining gang members on that cell and I'm looking for them. such a scenario as well. So like I'm thinking like them getting on the van and that maybe that them at that point definitely I'm doing that great number of chance like on job days. So like I'm doing that even way more than before. Like I'm doing that will be a great number of stocks at that point, and that will be tailing up and then trying to capture them at that point. Simply because like I'm looking for like maybe of like a such a station attack, so this taking attack and basically attack and destruction and basically resulting in that in what form that carry and 11 to that that carry that can. So like I'm looking at for putting it for like such a scenario. That's like the other formula that I'm doing. That way like them all getting on the van and everything like as like they were trying to get like I'm looking at the robot and carry that all of them coming to the result that usually that there will be like way greater than that the usual number of block that will be like picking up on that gem and things like even with like carrying superpower like and like they won't get that shape of the of like scenario where so like at that point like I'm like carry around the robot like the guarding that basically they have to like in the city uh, for the time being this they have to like still have they will have like escape escape or like of the year of the land like maybe them take it to like maybe at that point maybe that then resulting in that maybe that resulting in that 11 maybe that at that point maybe thinking of so like I'm looking maybe at that point like the innocent 11 maybe thinking of that pop-up and then basically thinking the like that pop-up might protect all of them. So like I'm looking even though Cali would be like totally thinking that basically that's like a bad idea. Still I'm looking like 11 will be having that absolute faith and confidence that like pop-up will be helping them out and maybe I'm looking for like and like I'm looking like to be a situation where like they would have to like take off like the top that's going to work with, but like I'm doing that maybe somehow level managing that community carrier or something like basically escape to like the town of Hawking. And that way like I'm looking for maybe that them or eventually in the band like ending up in like the town of Hawking then that them or that going up into like the port and ending up in that house of that Hawking. They something like that for and like them temporarily deciding to stay there sit uh, look like the scenario maybe like even that they like bring carry as well as vector in around that feel that into that having the state fit up in that house state and like the form like looking out of that maybe at that point that only at that point if they when like will be getting that upgrade of that would be of like realization that like copper like of that like copper sounding this is also like an individual scenario that I'm looking at, especially because with like the current situation being like all those like faceless monsters like probably infiltrating into like the Nazi level and just preferring like pop up not to like escape and survive definitely able to bring like pop up will be like along with like Joyce and Bob and like Will able to bring like definitely they will be escaping to like the battle world and for like the time being and like give you like and able to bring them not being able to like return back quickly into like the real world. They would be like the next time told me that sitting close to like basically stated with some level in like the battle but to like avoid like the whole most of invasion attack or into like villain of the and all that. So like I'm during this time like Hopper Hopper will be totally missing from that. So like I'm going to be during this time that I'm looking like maybe for like 11 to be bringing that carry and like the Roman friends to like the town of Hawkins to that house. To that house of Hawkins, like the scenario that I'm in. So like I'm then like I'm like eventually and I'm looking like still I'm critically my picture that like Mad Max might actually still be Cali, the name of the parade. So like so like Cali might because like maybe Cali might have might have sort of to like the town of Hawkins and like the bus and like that might have been solely through that operation within that Cali to like find Francisco and the name of the parade. So like Kerala Cali might have had the courage to do that drama all the way right back from that Cali like a half years back due to that experience trauma like I'm think Cali was always fearful of that approaching anywhere near like the energy level of the area of like within the town or something. So like I'm still like Cali might have mostly stayed at like the arcade place within like the town of August. And like while like hoping to like one day run into like 11 or like it's definitely not pyramid. So like maybe might be then while Gary might have spent in like that arcade place that like Gary might have played like the game arcade games and like that way like I'm just like that because he's still I'm still thinking my observation that like Mad Max would still be Gary every time Cali would be like, it would be only like once a while that like Cali would be like even showing up to like the town office, to like the arcade place. And at that point, that like and Cali would be so near talent that like Cali would be instantly like topping like the score point of like nothing at all from and basically reaching that top for in that first half area. Especially what might have happened in like the past in the first. So like I still think remember things that Cali to be more likely bad back to continuing on women. So like I'm maybe after that like I'm thinking that the scenario being that like Kiliman taking that carry as well as like the remaining robbers to that helps people in like the fall of like hopper. They are like being shocked like no free hopper. And then I'm looking like maybe that carry basically taking 11 to like the arcade games and like the round of game. And maybe like just by sheer coincidence, maybe at that point while that carry would be having like 11 play like the arcade games, maybe by sheer coincidence during that exact time like the team of like might look up and up showing up to like that arcade shape and maybe it would be there that I'm looking for like might the reunion between like Mike and Eleven would be like happening in that arcade shape and like shocking revelations to like look up and up in that like my is actually carry also happening simultaneously. So also like about would be that I'm looking for it. So that's also like an individual scenario that I'm looking at. And that reunion is just happening during like the very 300 and 50 day that anniversary day self like being the day when that like whole reunion between like Mike and Eleven as well will be happening. It's also like an individual of the scenario that I'm looking at on mention right now. Mention right now that's for like 11 channel right now. Showing like the range towards like 11. Like I'm looking like in that channel like I'm looking like carrier and perform way better than 11 in like the telekinesis area. That's the scenario that I'm looking at. And the reason I'm looking would be definitely because of like while being like 11 skills like I'm looking like this like 11 had basically like learned uh this like past year and everything like how like I'm looking like how might have ensured that like 11 like uses like big like Hopper looking after like the way Hopper looking after like 11 might have resulted in like 11 mostly like not using her not like using and practicing her superpowers at all. Unless like it will be like only like when like 11 might have been angry with like Hopper alone that like 11 might have even used her telekinesis powers like the thing of the so like other than that for like the past year and everything like 11 might have not used her telekinesis powers at all. So like so the reason like 11 telekinesis powers might have not zero much at all, depending on the driver. So like that won't be the case with like carry because like I'm looking like because of that carry and her gang like doing the for robbery and everything like I'm doing. Carry might have always used her like telekinesis power superpowers and might have all kept on using it and that might have resulted in like the telekinesis power getting more and more sharpened to the point that in like the second like I'm doing like carry like telekinesis power will be having like far more intensity and strength than that of 11 depending on the bench. Here like I'm doing it will be so like I'm doing right now 11 as the learner would be trying to like pull the train towards like 11 am would be like 11 totally struggling with like even though 11 am would be like moving the train like I was going to still 11 would be totally struggling and would be having be having like like the scenario that I'm doing. So like then I'm going to like it would be Cali's turn but like Cali would be like it would be like Cali trying to train 11 right now like the scenario that I would select. Then Cali would be like showing 11 like has like Cali would be using her telekinesis support to like pull that very thin train and in that like I'm Cali would be like pulling it with like way more in an effortless manner while pulling it to like way more creative distance than like 11 had struggled to like pull that train is like in the scenario setup. So and like Cali won't be even having as much of like clear field after doing that when compared to like 11 like the scenario that so like I'm listening to Cali right now would be like training and sharpening up like 11 like telekinesis power, especially get like I'm doing like since like 11 would definitely be like consider would be like the successful experiment of like well compared to the carry which might have number 8 might have definitely been like the failure all the numbers like until 11 like number 11 like would be all considered as like failure by for another certain premise. So like I'm doing even though currently I'm the like carry will be having like superior intensity of like 20 powers when compared to like 11. Still, I'm looking on like 11 will be eventually unleashing 11's like full potential. Will be sharpening up sub powers and will be unleashing our full potential. And that point, I feel like 11 will be far superiorly stronger and powerful when compared to not only carry but like all the remaining like failed elements of turn up from all the way from that one defense. This is like my theory and prediction right now. That the minimum prediction right now is of like what if it that was specifically with that things within that 11 life that 11 user right now finding that will be angering 11 so much. But when you specifically that incident of like seeing Mike playing around with like Maxi in this like the scenario that I'm going for you to be especially Maxi and like like 11 right now for a scenario that I'm doing for like 11 right now that's okay like focusing right now on that Maxi and upspace and really that totally angering 11 right now to like extreme because like I'm regardless of all the people in like the past that's how 11 like addition like due to like my considering due to like how extremely how extreme like 11 will be having that deep addiction towards like my would be that the reason for like I'm doing like a consumer revolution right now that the most anger would that 11 would be having by turning back and looking back towards like would be not even towards like for another but would be towards specifically vaccine, especially when brain. So lad for taking my for like from 11 point of view, 11 taking for taking someone for extremely purchase to like 11 away from like 11. Definitely remember brain. So like right now, but like 11 in front mind like seeing like maxing space, like focusing maxing space and like with that absolute anger happening for like 11 and with that anger like right now, but like 11 only pulling like the brain uh pulling the train and basically I'm doing like so much with like that extreme intensity that like I'm doing the train would be only stopping right in front of the 11 and Cali would be like static just right in front of them like uh within just a meter distance right in front of them would be how much to like extent of distance where I'm not trying like 11 user right now pulling that train like the scenario that I'm doing and that will be totally stopping that Cali like the scenario that I'm doing like even Cali right now one of the innovations that like even though Cali would have like what like about years like Cali would have probably sharpened her like Pelican superpower like even still not even before maybe Cali would be able to like have do so much with her Pelican about to like move that train to such extreme distance. It's definitely my very impressive. So like that way like 11 like natural talent for that superpower of like Pelican is like the intensity of it like so based on even carrier right now. Then look at it that I'm looking over redemption right now for like 11 seeing like opportunities for 11 in the range like I'm that will be the only part of that. I'm looking that will be the only part of that 11 that falls like slowly as like 11 just like zero hold of like 11 like body as well 11 like mind getting stronger and basically being more and more being capable of like handling levels like to true potential more and more of like the true potential of like 11 like superpowers discipline and so like basically 11 being would like teach that message of pop up in like 11 streets while sleeping that would definitely be part of that growth of like natural growth of like 11 like superpowers so like I'm just like eventually I'm without me eventually I'm definitely putting like 11 even without a blindfold by just like 11 simply by keeping her eyes closed even without a blindfold like I'm like you don't would be able to like enter into like the dark void of like the and find people and communicate with people. It's definitely my good for them. So that to that extent, like 11 like powers would be like injury heroes and stuff, So like the minimum insurance right now, I'm sort of like a right hand or like I'm sprint at least 11 through her powers like through like the dark world of near the finding her a carol, like finding a location way alone. It's like the scenario that I was looking at. Then I was for like around like 11 like carrying and also like carrying the gang like going up to and finding a way Carol and I was like see on seeing them like he will get only shocked and scared and I was like he will be frantically desperately running away scared and trying to like save himself and he will be desperately trying to like survive and save himself and he will be only scared and 11 would be like 11 and Carrie and all of them would be chasing after him and I was like in this the scenario to be like him totally begging for like mercy and like him totally begging to like grab this life and all that like the scenario that I was saying and at that point I'm like Carrie is totally uh, from Gary's point of view, like, I'm thinking like, Gary would be only the different caddy being only able to think along the lines as we like basically each one of like 11 train like like will be along the lines the caddy everything and caddy will be like definitely the scenario that I'm looking for like them to like chase up the pressure of shadow and like them corner rate shadows like the scenario that I'm looking at that point I'm like caddy uh not attacking, but like instead like carrying totally telling 11 to that take it like an elimination, like the scenario that I'm looking. So like I'm looking into like for 11 falling for like can influence that like 11 totally making sort of and taking it like this like of like a right arrow with like the scenario that I'm doing. But like even though 11 would be doing that like I'm doing since after breaking right arrows like I'm doing like 11 a disturbance like a disturbance kind of like a feeling would be like forming within like elements like might even so like it's slowly that disturbs kind of like a feeling in the background from the 11 is definitely and the reason maybe I'm getting because like so far like even though 11 has taken the life of like people even in like the past elections like like it's made which is sort of like an act of like self-defense from 11 side like I'm in like definitely this like I'm the next scenario to be like it will be specifically 11 upset that it will take in the life of breaker or but like I'm doing this at that point it will be totally different for like 11 because like to be the very first time in like 11's life that 11 will be like taking another person's life where it's not a matter of like just like the scenario that I'm looking so certainly that will be like hugely affecting plans will be like hugely affecting elements that uh, after that they have taken the life of like a very role fact that 11 for the first time 11 life had basically when it's not even matter like the in that role like 11 like basically chasing after and targeting someone and chasing after someone to that and taking the life of someone like that's like the that would be that very first experience in that 11th life and that learning is deep down feeling something seriously wrong about it and like that will be that feeling would be like totally disturbing 11 because and then was like that lead that for 11 to that feel so wrong within her at that point there would definitely be the extreme influence of like of like parenting for like the past year parenting of like operating though it was like extremely irritating for like 11 still I'm going to be that genuine good effects of like all those things that Hopper might have taught 11 and advised and taught 11 and everything like that parenting of that Hopper about like not and Hopper might have totally as part of like that parenting that Hopper had would have given 11 for like the Vasya Hopper might have even told 11 to like not use 11 to power to like only others like unless it's like a map like unless it's like only in like a scenario like the difference to like never use like 11 or might be part of like the teaching that might not know 11 so like at that point 11 probably remembering all that while feeling disturbed with like the scenario that I was so like that might after like that very night after like taking away shadow like like the scenario to be like 11 not taking like sleep that night. Due to that disturbed feeling, it's like the scenario that I'm living. And 11 at that point will be feeling totally uneasy and like will be feeling disturbed and will be slowly starting lacking forward. At that point, it's like regardless of how extremely deep out and rage, that rage 11 will be having towards Hopper like I'm looking after like taking the life of like a rage shadow. This is like the scenario that I'm living. After 11 taking the life of Ray Carol, like 11 getting disturbed and 11 that disturbing feeling should have something like 11 starting to like um, must hop was like a scenario that I'm good for it. That night when 11 will be sleeping, like I'm looking like 11 putting on the blindfold and like literally 11 trying to like throw the dark boy like 11 something for hop was like the scenario that I'm looking and that's when 11 getting the biggest shock for the because like at that point I was like 11 the biggest shock in this game like caught up along with, like Joyce Bob as well as Will. Even though 11 won't be like knowing who's Bob is like I'm just like with 11 seeing like along with like hop up like Joyce as well as Will like scared and running away next the paddle board, like running away and trying to hide and escape in like the paddle board with like great like faceless monster like chasing after but it's like the scenario that I'm looking after right now because like I'm looking like since like the shadow monster is in like the paddle board the game is like the scenario that I'm looking right now is for like firstly Bob of Joyce after that like great maybe along with them like phones as well as like a few of the like side while the majority of the times I'm during the league getting taken out by and ending up dying by like the attack of like the army of it's not to connect that kind of like of like scenario that I'm so like I'm doing like yeah like I'm doing like Hopper and Joyce and like going and comment like really struggling and like trying to like escape and get away from like the faceless monsters while they will be all hiding in like world and everything. So the scenario that I'm putting. And this will be what like I'm like 11 and on that very night at 11 will be like Mr. and like will be searching for Hopper through like the last word. 11 will be seeing this exact thing. And that when I'm the 11 will be like genuinely extremely concerned and like genuinely worried for like Hopper. And 11, like at that point, like the biggest priority in like 11's life would be to like as soon as possible make it back and not only to like Hawkins, but like to precisely the real about the of like Papa or not maybe close the gate for like 11 to that as soon as possible enter into like the parenthood and basically to save Papa that and definitely have people like 11 of God was seeing will as a scare will as well along with like Papa also definitely as well as Joyce as well definitely have like that for incident in like the house where like 11 had to spend time with like Joyce like I'm feeling it how Joyce like treated 11 and all that like that only might have lead down from a genuine bond within like 11 towards like and liking within 11 was those as well the human those so like Joyce as well as like Will as well as like Hopper as well like being in danger like in like while trying to make the bad word seeing that was like the scenario that I'm doing 11 seeing that so like the dark way like the scenario that I'm going to like at that point, 11 probably being worried for them and 11 sadly wanting to like as soon as possible like go up to like the parachute and save them like the scenario that so like 11 in the middle of the night and like straight away and like going up to Callie and like waking up Callie and like 11 saying how the situation and like 11 telling Callie how 11 definitely at that instant itself has to like go to like the parachute and go to like in the round of office and go to like the parachute and save them sort of listens like Jan is like the leader of like the gang of like those sort of like I'm looking like definitely Jan straight away would be sending 11 that like she would definitely be helping 11 definitely 11 would be definitely seeking the help of Gary and definitely Gary would be definitely giving that help and going around with like 11 and never going like so like along with like 11 and Gary like uh the like that that Roberts as well all of them collectively getting on their van and basically they're more or less straight away heading off to that town of Hawkins like just another that and so like after like straight up like they would be making it to like an upgrade about like like 11 as well as Gary but always saw and like the situation with like the upgrade about revive and would be like totally in like a destroyed kind of like state and like I'm telling you the shadow monster would have totally after like Owens and like pop up and George and Bill might have escaped into like the shadow world. Even at that point, I was like the shadow monster would be shadow monster and would be that would be in like there will be a hierarchy among like these Facebook monsters as well. They like and the like the mainly the shadow monsters the giant spider like shadow monster won't be like someone who always like focuses on attacking would be that mostly the shadow monster would be mostly in like a comfortable position, always giving commands to its like underlying which would be like the humanoid as well as like the dark like faceless monster, great army of faceless monsters, the female monsters. Like the shadow monster would be mainly focused on like making the other monsters, faceless monsters, do the work for like the shadow monsters, like and keeping order with like the scenario that like even after like so the scenario that I'm for like even after like Sopa and Joyce as well as like Holmes as well as Bob as well as Will would be like escaping into like the parallel through like the gates like the nothing ever even then like I'm like the shadow monster would be straight away giving the orders to all the cases monster who would have by then destroy like the energy laboratory and wiped out like the majority of like the scientists within like the energy laboratory to like only head towards like the parallel and to like eliminate the remaining of them like to eliminate Pop and Joyce and like Bob. It's like the scenario exploring well to like eliminate all of them and like even Owens as well. And definitely able to listen to like the shadow monster can see what will see would definitely be able to like exactly like how Will can see what the shadow see and feel what the shadow monster see and feel like I'm doing so we're same thing with like shadow monster as well. So like I'm doing by now like the shadow monster will be well fully aware that like Owens is like the current leader of like the kind of the level of all the scientists that can basically use the flamethrower and destroy like the underground side of like this monsters and everything. So definitely like the shadow monster and the Supreme definitely won't be that of like won't be having like no intention at all of like giving up the instruction of like not only the energy laboratory but also the scientists until like taking out their nails usually like which the shadow monster will be targeting as like consistently nurtured. So like I'm in that way the shadow monster giving like the happening of like this monster to like upper respect like the last to like even though we like the target and says after like Owen can take Owen's out like the scenario that I'm looking so like that way I'm looking like as like a friend of them will be trying to like escape and will be entering deep into like the parallel world like one as well will be talking with them. So like the there's monsters as well so we taking up like the scenario that I'm looking. So like during this time I'm different like everyone like 11 and carry as well as like the remaining gang of Capcom like all of them would be entering into like the uh entering into like the end of the level and like them getting like the biggest shock at seeing like the full extent of like the game within the end of the level and like then entering through the gates and like then initially finally and it will be like for me an absolute mind blowing situation for like Carrie as well as like the gang of robbers who would be even to the person who have absolutely no idea like for like the extent of like the parallel world of like the games or like the monsters or like situation which like happens. Definitely obviously one of the ambition like the generating them biggest shock and then like them all collectively 11 as well as like carriers that respect the gang of copies, like all of them collectively venturing into like the parallel world and getting them with like that absolute intent to like find and save Hopper and all, and them eventually finding Hopper and all that. And I'm also like, right then like I'm doing that lead and absolute fight between like the army of like faceless monsters, which would be like dark like form. Like I'm looking like mostly it will be like the humanoid form, more than the humanoid form. It will be mainly like the dark like uh, transformed form of like the faceless monster. So like I'm thinking so army of monsters was like Cali, the team of like Cali and 11, which is like the scenario that I'm looking for. And I'm looking by then like Cali would have trained 11 like superpowers to like even sharp and 11 like superpowers will be getting more and more sharp. So like I'm looking like the combined team of like 11 and carry like basically taking out like those army of like faceless monsters who will be present right there in that area in that parallel world. And to be trying to like because like in the scenario to be like this army of like faceless monsters like eventually catching up to like top runners and as like it will be about to take of copper like I'm looking at that to get that very last second that I'm putting like 11 and Cali will be showing up and using that switch of and like that will be happening and I'm moving that way 11 and Cali like taking out those exact section of like army of like three monsters and like I'm looking at like 11 and Cali's help like I'm looking like them like Owens and like Owens and Hopper and like those and will like all of them finally being able to like get back into like finally being able to like make it back into like the real world without much creative like one scenario that I'm doing or like I'm looking at them probably not being able to like quickly get back into like the real world. So like I'm doing that way like them maybe even exploring a bit of like the battle world and I'm delivering them that way usually like spotting maybe like the shadow monster from like an instant or like maybe like the shadow monster at that point like once like carry and deliver will be like taking out like the army of like the faceless monsters at that point like the shadow monster being extremely angry so like at that point like I was should be built that will be telling them that you have upset like the master like the shadow monster even more and like at that point like them probably noticing like the ground shaking and that's when like the shadow monster will be approaching them to take them out by the shadow monster itself. So, like this scenario that so like at that point like I'm looking all of them being probably scared and I'm looking of them quickly rushing towards like back towards like the gate of like the end of the laboratory and then like barely managing to like make it back to like the end of the laboratory by the time like the shadow monster will be about to attack them like the scenario that I was wondering about.